Hello everyone, Karen the Warp Spinster here. Welcome to my channel and thanks for spending some time with me today. For the last 2 weeks we have been doing the X's of the Hugs and Kisses XOXO series, and it's time, I think, to move on to the hugs portion of it, which are the O's. And of course we're going to try to wonkify the O's a bit because that's what we do here. Now, a couple of things that we have done in the past can be helpful to this. For example, putting curves on corners of things. So you could do 4 of these on 4 different corners. In fact, probably will do that today, and then that creates a wonkified O. So that is useful, and then to know that it's probably going to work. And then we have the straight corners, which can make sort of an O, a very straight O. I'm thinking that maybe a 9 patch for an O would be interesting if we did this in the 4 corners, but then we had straight pieces in the center squares of a 9 patchish look. So those are a couple of ideas. I'm really leaning toward the idea of just doing these curves to make funky O's. And of course we could do all kinds of things, such as we've done here where we have different centers. We could do all of our usual stuff, so we'll talk about that. And then I also pulled out, oh, and I will try to find this and link it in the description below when we did this. It was quite a while ago. And then there is this piece which I showed you in a circles video, which again I will link below. And this is one of the handy things about my orphan block doing these explorations is we have this, and I'm actually going to separate these two. Sorry, I'm wiggling the camera. I will endeavor to not do that. I need to move my sewing table all the way to the other side of the room, although defeats the purpose. That's where the camera stand is, and I keep leaning on it and wobbling you. Sorry about that. All right, now this one is the less good circle of the two. Was the first one I did, and you know, I learned some things and I got better. So I'm going to use this and see how it works to superimpose an X on top of the O. We'll see how it goes. So that's the plan for today. And let's start out with this since we have it out here. And I don't have much to spare over here, but I do on the top and the bottom, which I think is going to be good. And my ruler is not, well, let's go this way. Should we go this way? Yes. I could start down here, but I'm going to make my X go across here. This may, you know, we may just fall flat on our face here, but it wouldn't be the first time. Now, question is, do I want to do, let's try a curve. Well, 2 choices. We could do a straight here because there's a lot of curve here, obviously. We could do straight pieces to contrast with that, or we could do one of each, or we could do, let's do one of each, just to see how we like the effect. I'm going to try for sort of roughly the center here. Now this is going to distort the circle, of course, because we're inserting something. Okay, now I have to figure out what I'm putting in there. Oh my. Let me dig through my stash here. I'm sure there's some cafe in there somewhere that will work. I will be back. Here's a piece of cafe that I think will work fine, although it isn't very contrasty with the background, is it? it would be quite a subtle one. This is going to, let's see. We may find out it was a bad choice, but there we are. So I am actually going to cut it diagonally to make sure I can get all the way across that circle. And I want it to be a little bit flared at one end. Then I will go ahead and just sew that in the middle. It's going to throw off the circle, of course. We know, and we will work with that. Here's the piece. Wish me luck. This is where we're going to run into trouble because we have such narrow sides here of the background, which is a result of us cutting where we did, but we are accustomed to making things work, right? So, do I want these to match up? Do I want to slide it down? If I slide it down a bit, it will offset it, which you know I kind of prefer, and it will also help me to, not really, to line up that side. I have a feeling we're going to end up with a curve over there, aren't we? If I do this, then I'd see a straight line across here. No, we're just going to go for it. If we end up with a wonky thing, we'll add something on there, right? Oy. So I will just flip and sew those. Oh, and of course I could splice things into here. Maybe I should do that for some contrast. What do you think? Maybe some of that pink or that teal or that teal. Let's try that. That's what we're here for. We're playing. Here we have our first cross of the X, and I actually just kind of like it this way. It reminds me of something, but I hope it's not an unwholesome something. All right, this then, I'm just looking at these creases in here, is making me a little crazy. Now we want to do a cross, and do I want to do a curve on this? And I think I do. Do I want to do an S curve? Probably. Not too, I want it to be reasonably gentle. And then what am I going to use for the fabric that I put in there? I'm going to cut the curve first. I'm trying to gauge where I want this. Do I want it to come from the side, come up this way? No, we're going to do it this way. And if I seem a little hesitant, it's because I kind of am. All right. I'm pretty sure that I'm already going to like this. And we'll shift this way this time, so we kind of help that out a little bit. So now the question becomes, what are we putting through there? We could do black. Let's see what that would be like. I must have a black strip somewhere. We could sort of fake it anyway. Let's put that underneath it. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. We're going to have to explore that. Ooh. What do you think? Makes a whole other thing. Maybe we'll do some of that next week. Ooh. I like it a lot. Okay. Enough fooling around, Karen. Okay. Okay. It's an okay day, apparently. Let's do we want to do black? That's a possibility. What else might we do? Do we want stripes when you're doing this curve? I think would if they aren't following the curve, I think would be not so good, at least to my eye. We still have this piece. Oh no. No, 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 no. I'm thinking maybe a teal like this. And I will go in search of that. How about, do we have any orange in that? We do have a little bit of orange. No, I don't think so. Needs to be pretty high contrast. I'm going in search of a teal. I actually happen to have some teal right behind me for another project. And I'm liking that better than the black, I think. Maybe, maybe not. Let's go with the black just because we haven't really done anything with black in the middle. So now I'm going to have to, I think I'll get a wider piece of black. The strip was just to see how it would look. I'm going to have enough to have seam allowances and broaden it up here. So I like the black. All right, y'all have seen me do curves before. I will put a link down below to doing curves on the X's from last week in case you haven't seen that one. And I hope I can remember all the things I'm promising you. While I was looking for a larger piece of black, I happened upon this polka dot. That may be a little much. I would have liked that, I think, if we had a solid one here and then the polka dot here. I think it kind of needs just the plain black. But I would like to do something with the polka dots at some point. And here I am again. I think if we did like a bias strip sort of thing so that it would curve around here, say we hadn't split this and we did just on top, we did a bias with the stripe. I think that would look pretty good as long as that stripe was following on the curve. Kind of like it. I'm really wishing this had been a solid. I could always make it a solid. It's not as if I couldn't take that out and put something else in, but we've already cut this, so. Oh boy, I'm a little scattered today, aren't I? This side is sewn. Now I'm ready to cut the second side, and I'm just gonna have wonky sides no matter what I do. So that is something we will deal with at another time if need be. Ordinarily, if we hadn't started out with something that was already pieced, I would have given myself more room on the two sides. And we are just trying things out. That's what we do here. And now that one is ready to sew. I may have other thoughts about it. I'm sure you have other thoughts too, which I hope you will share in the comments. Now at this point, we want to think about how we're going to trim this to size. And I guess there really isn't any reason why we couldn't, in fact, cut off part of the hug. That just sounds rude, doesn't it? A hug ended too soon. So I'm going to go ahead and trim this up. I like this, and I don't know, I could do this as a curve, couldn't I? Which I might do just because I can always trim it differently later. But since I have a curve going on here anyway, oops, that was bad, I can just make that a curve. And then leave these ends straight and do another curve here, so that when I use this block, however I'm going to use it, we can build that curve in. Well, you know I like curves, so it's going to happen. And I think next week what I plan to do, if I don't do that offset S-curve, is talk a little bit about how I'm putting a couple of quilts together that have these odd shapes. All right, there's number one. Now, all kinds of embellishment things you could do. Of course, you could, well, we could have stitched around the circle to begin with. Would have been handier. If we wanted to add some texture there, we could add some texture across here just by using black and that railroad stitch or whatever stitch. But for now, let's just leave this and think about the 4 corner curves. And I'm really liking that idea. Let's start out with some plain squares, or do we want to, I don't know, I'm torn. Let's start out with some plain squares and then we can see where that takes us. So I will, what do we want to do for, in terms of colors? Do we want bright here and these be black or white? Do we want the opposite? Let's start with black squares and then we'll do brights in the curves. So I'm going to do the, well, it doesn't really matter how I do the squares, but let's say we do them about 5 inches square. Already I've changed my mind. I have 2 black 5-inch squares. I'm thinking I want a black and white print in the opposite ones. Polka dot I think would be fun, but that's a little too regular and it will look funky when it's offset. And you know I'm okay with funky, but I'm pretty sure that will not sit well with my eyes. Might be something you love. I think it would be fun, but maybe, well, you know, we could try it. I'm game for anything today. So I'm going to cut a couple, at least a couple more squares here. I raided my black and white stash and found some possibilities for opposing corners here, and I love this fabric. I may have a different use for that, not sure. So there's high contrast with those and not so high contrast with these. And this one, and I could mix them all up naturally. Let's go with this one, and I'll just do some gentle curves, and I'm not going to worry about this turning out to be exactly a circle. I'm doing some gentle curves in each corner and they will come together however they come together. I don't want to do them way out here. I do want them to be in some sense a contained circular sort of look here, so I don't want them to go off the edge. So I'll do them, I don't know, maybe around here-ish on each of those corners, and then we will insert a bright. I also rated my solid brights. While I was in my black and white stash, I noticed this black and white 4 patch that we did in some video or other, which gave me more ideas. So it's kind of clear to me we're going to be doing this again next week. And then I will do some prints for you all that aren't especially fond of solids. And we'll see how those look. But for this week, I'm going to do some solids here. Then I have one more idea, and the rest will wait on next week. So let's just start cutting some curves here. Not caring too much about the relationship to each other, just sort of cutting curves on one corner. Now, if you like this gentle curve, and then of course when you do inserts, you could have all kinds of splices within the inserts. And if you like that sort of thing, then I highly recommend looking at Cindy Grisdella's books and her work. Here's another thing I'm promising you to post. I will post a link to her Instagram. She also has three books now? At least 3. And they're really wonderful, particularly if you want to make a start in improv quilting. She has some really good ones for that. So, and she does lots of marvelous quilts with these gentle curve things. These are perhaps not so gentle. Well, they're all right. They won't be difficult to sew, but they look quite a bit alike as I'm looking at it. So perhaps what I will do is different widths of strips in there and maybe have some of them offset a little bit. We'll see, because we want it to be funky. I could do all one color, but I think I'm going to do 4 different colors, see how that looks. And of course, you could do this with leaving these intact and then doing an applique circle ring, I should call it, not a circle, a ring. Well, you could do circles too, just plain circles. I guess they're heartfelt hugs or heart-filled hugs, something. Maybe we'll try that next week. But of course, we can do any of our standard variations in here, changes in fabrics, changes in widths, whether they're the sides are parallel or if they're a little wonky. Lots of choices to play with. And of course, I'm back again. We could always do this, and they would end up really quite funky. But I think for this, we're going to stick with that. And that's something you could explore on your own if you want to try swapping out the centers. Wouldn't that be interesting if you had the same color on the outside? So say you had a large black square, and then you cut out something ringish like in the center and fit in the center, and then put in the ring of inserts. Too many ideas. Are you getting tired of me? I just keep interrupting myself. Oh, let's do this. It's a very squirrel kind of day. I have 2 of these spliced in, and I am pressing them toward the dark. They, of course, need to be trimmed. I wanted to just do a quick review demo here for how I am cutting these and adding them in. Again, the link to previous videos for doing this and doing curves will be down in the description below, but thought we would do this just to do a quick review. I want the curve to be the same as this curve to match it. Now we don't have seam allowances, so it's not going to be a perfect insert, as you can see. I'm going to leave a little bit on each end just because it's not going to be perfectly inserted, and I want to have a little wiggle room. And I'm going to just follow this curve. Now I could have layered these two on top of each other, the square and this color, and cut them at the same time. That's also an option. And in many cases I will do that. Then I am going to mark where this starts. And I want to try to have the convex on top, which means this is going to be on top when it goes to the machine. So I'm going to mark the edge of that right down here, because I'm going to pull that out, which almost always means I'm going to lose my place with the black piece here. And then I can cut a freeform curve here, but I've already got this curve established when I originally cut the square. So I'm going to figure out about how I want that curve to be. Do I want it to be even width all the way up? Do I want to change the width? And always remembering that it's going to be narrower than I see it here, because I've still got 2 seam allowances to take out of that. So I'm going to put it about there and then cut this curve. When you are cutting curves, of course, be really careful to keep your fingers out of the way. I'm pretty comfortable and safe doing it if, and again, I'm going to mark, mark the end, marking the piece I'm taking away, and then this piece just goes away, and I'll know where to start sewing. Cutting curves again, sorry. You can get a klutz glove that will protect your hands going around, and absolutely you can do that. I'm pretty comfortable cutting just one layer. If I were cutting both layers at once, I would probably put a glove on, because I'm going to have to control how that shift happens under my rotary blade. But of course, always be safe, and if you want to use a klutz glove, absolutely do that. Now I'm going to sew this first curve. Doesn't matter which side I do first, but I'm going to do this one. And here's my mark where I start. This is now, if I put right sides together, the convex is going to be on top. I'm going to line up that end. And this actually is a fairly even curve that I've cut. If it were really kind of wonkier than this, then I would definitely want to make sure that I've marked my starting point, because when you're sewing the seams, you have to match that curve. So if it's shallow in some places and deeper in others, you need to have the other piece match that. Then I'm going to use needle down on my machine, do scant 1/4 inch seam, go slowly, and make sure that when I'm measuring the 1/4 inch seam, I'm measuring it where the needle is coming into the fabric, not at the beginning of the presser foot. And just take your time and go slowly. Obviously, these need to be trimmed. I think what I'm going to do is not trim the outside yet, but trim them so that I can sew them into a 4 patch, and then I'll trim the outside. Just trying to rearrange a little. I liked it better the other way. I gave some fleeting thought to doing a second one of, I don't know, one of these black ones, and making the curve more gentle. But I like these just fine. So all I'm going to do is straighten out these inside seams here, sew them together, and then I'll trim on the outside. And that's just going to be the usual. Get as much out of it as I can. Trim off. And then this one's going to have to be losing some on that, but I'm going to be losing some on all of them. And then just continue to do that, and they are not going to match up on the outside, but I'll do those all at once. All right, they all come together pretty well. This one is long this way. I could do it here and then trim the outside, but then this matches up and I want it to be a little wonky, so I'm going to actually do the opposite and trim some more off of here. And then I will sew these into a 4-patch and trim the outside. Here is our multicolored hug. I pressed these seams to the black so that I could butt these up against each other. And then on this side, I could of course press it all one direction, or any of these I could press open. But I'm going to take this seam, push that one this way, this one this way, and it's given enough here. Sometimes you have to clip a stitch there, and then I can press them with this sort of spin in the center. And that, then I will trim these edges, and that will be that. Now as I'm trimming this, I'm not paying attention to having this be square, so I'm not measuring each side. I am trying to make it parallel sides, however. And there we are. So now the last thing I want to try, I could try on any sort of background, but I thought it would be fun to use this square with the rings on it. And I want to just do fusible hugs on here. And I like to go with odd numbers, especially 3, so I'm going to go with that. But I don't need for them to be perfect circles, I don't think. They aren't going to be, we'll see how it looks. And then applique them on, and the usual applies, of course. I could do any kind of applique on it. I could do machine applique with invisible thread, or a contrasting thread, or a matching thread. Could do hand applique, of course. All sorts of choices, but I'm just going to start out with some fusible web and drawing some sort of ovally, maybe a little bit roundy shapes, and then applique them on. I have roughly drawn 3 roughly oval shapes. One I purposely made a little squared off at the end, and put the fusible, press the fusible web on the wrong side. Now I will cut these out and we'll see about placing them on here. One thing I noticed is that it's going to be very difficult to arrange these without it looking like a face. But, well, that's not so bad. I'm discovering that I don't like this background with it because it overpowers the shapes. And sometimes that chaos is okay, but in this case it is not for me. So I have some of those other squares I cut. Let's see how they look on this. It will be a tighter fit, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And that's better. This purple maybe could be a brighter purple, and it would work better. Let's try it on a light colored one. You know, ordinarily I really like brights on black, but I sometimes like it on white, and I think I love this contrast between the straight lines on the background and the oval shapes. So I think I'm going to make this hugs block this size. I'll fuse it and then we'll come back and look at what we've done today. And in case you haven't watched the fuse type videos before, when I'm removing the backing paper, I don't try to bend it back at the edge because then that will ravel the edge. So I just take a pin or a seam ripper or something and score the paper on the back. It tells me I didn't score that very well, and then I can just pull it back from there, and I'm not raveling the edges. The fruits of our labors for today. I like them all in different ways. I think I would have changed this to maybe say this bright pink or rose or a teal blue, but it's okay. We tried it out and that's what this channel's about. I like this one very much. The next one I might do gentler curves and see how that works out, but it definitely has that sort of circular effect without being an actual circle that we had to piece or applique. And then I just kind of like this cute little thing. It's nothing fancy. I'm still pondering how I want to applique it, what thread I want to use, and what stitch I want to use to just decide how much to pop it out. I think I will do maybe the same color but a little darker thread going around it. Because they're circular, I will probably do something like a zigzag or a very short decorative stitch so that you can't tell when the end joins with the beginning. This one I don't know, I'm thinking I might want some texture in here, which I could add with quilting also. So I think this is my favorite, this is second, and then this one. Although I do like the concept of the X crossing the O and having that swoop effect, as we did in the one last week. That is going to be it for this week. Next week, there are a couple other ideas that I want to explore, and we'll see how much time we have. I may talk to you about some quilts I'm putting together, or that may wait till the following week. So I hope I will see you then. As always, please put your suggestions, how you might have done things differently, in the comments below. I thank you for your kind comments. And also always read the comments. Only occasionally are there rude ones, and I just pretty much ignore them. But you will find some good and interesting ideas and lessons learned from people. So always, please always read your fellow subscribers or viewers' comments. And of course, you know the drill. Please like and subscribe if you like what we're doing here. So I hope I will see you next week. In the meantime, be well, be safe, be happy, be quilting. Peace out.